This is an HOA enforcement area. You are in violation of the covenants.
I pay my dues. You can't restrict access to my property.
Read the signs. This is HOA property. You are violating the rules.
These signs are illegal. I'm not going anywhere.
I want you to imagine pulling into your own driveway after a long trip, tired, sunburned, and ready to collapse into your own bed, only to find a giant for sale sign hammered into your front yard, strangers walking through your living room, and a woman you barely know standing on your porch telling people about the wonderful open floor plan. That is exactly what happened to me. And trust me, what happened next was something nobody saw coming. My name is Jake Dawson. I am 38 years old. I own a 40-acre ranch in a small town just outside of Austin, Texas. And this is the story of how an HOA president named Linda Hargrove, who the entire neighborhood called HOA Karen, tried to literally sell my home out from under me while I was away on a work trip. And when I caught her red-handed, she did the one thing that made everything 10 times worse. She called 911 and told the police that I was the intruder. Buckle up, because this story is absolutely wild. Let me give you some background, so you understand how insane this whole situation really was. I bought my ranch in 2016. It had been in rough shape when I found it. The previous owner was an elderly man named Harold Briggs, who had let the property fall apart over the last decade of his life. When Harold passed away, his kids wanted nothing to do with the place. They listed it cheap. I mean, really cheap. I had been saving money for years working as a pipeline welder, and I jumped on it. The ranch had a main house, a barn, a guest cottage, a small pond, and acres of open pasture. It was my dream property. I spent the next 3 years pouring every spare dollar and every free weekend into fixing it up. New roof, new plumbing. Rebuilt the barn from the ground up. Fenced the entire property. By the time I was done, that rundown ranch had become something truly beautiful. It was my pride and joy. It was everything I had ever worked for. Now here's where things start to get complicated. About 2 miles down the road from my ranch, a new housing development called Whispering Oaks. Estates had been built in 2018. It was one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods with matching mailboxes, identical landscaping, and rules about everything from the color of your front door to how tall your grass could be. And of course, it had an HOA, the Whispering Oaks Homeowners Association. And the president of that HOA was a woman named Linda Hargrove. Linda was in her mid-50s, had a short blonde haircut that looked like she asked for the "I want to speak to the manager" special. And she walked around that neighborhood like she owned every single house in it. The residents of Whispering Oaks were terrified of her. She would fine people for leaving their trash cans out 10 minutes past the designated pickup window. She once made a family repaint their entire house because the shade of beige they chose was 2 tones too warm. She was, by every definition, a Karen. Here is the thing, though. My ranch was not in Whispering Oaks Estates. My property had existed for over 60 years before that development was even a thought. I was not part of their HOA. I had never signed any HOA agreement. I had no connection to Whispering Oaks other than geographic proximity. But Linda did not see it that way. In her mind, because my ranch was within a 2-mile radius of her precious development, I fell under her jurisdiction. The first time she showed up at my door was in the summer of 2019. She marched right up to my porch, clipboard in hand, and told me that my barn was an eyesore and that I needed to either paint it or tear it down. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I told her politely that I was not part of her HOA and that she had no authority over my property. She did not like that answer. Not one bit. After that first encounter, Linda started showing up regularly. She would drive by my ranch slowly, sometimes stopping to take photos. She sent me letters on official-looking HOA letterhead demanding that I mow my pasture to a specific height, remove my unsightly farm equipment from view, and install an approved mailbox. Each time, I threw the letters in the trash. Each time I told her she had zero authority over me. And each time, she got a little more aggressive. She started filing complaints with the county, claiming my property was a health hazard, that my animals were creating a nuisance, that my fence was encroaching on public land. Every single complaint was investigated and dismissed. Every single one. But Linda was relentless. She was like a dog with a bone. She simply would not let go. It took me a while to figure out what was really going on. A neighbor from Whispering Oaks, a nice guy named Tim, pulled me aside one day at the hardware store and told me the truth. Linda was not just being a control freak. She had a financial motive. Apparently, a real estate developer had approached the Whispering Oaks HOA about expanding the development. They wanted to build another 50 homes. But to do that, they needed more land. My land. The developer had offered a significant sum to the HOA as a finder's fee if they could convince me to sell. And Linda, as HOA president, would personally receive a generous administrative bonus for facilitating the deal. That is why she had been harassing me. She wanted me gone. She wanted my ranch demolished and turned into another block of identical beige houses. And when I refused to sell, she decided to take matters into her own hands. In September of 2023, I got called out for a major welding job in North Dakota. It was a big contract, good money, and it was supposed to last 3 weeks. I did not want to leave the ranch that long, but the pay was too good to pass up. I asked my buddy Marcus to check on the property every few days, feed the horses, make sure everything was running. Marcus agreed. I packed my truck, locked up the house, and hit the road. I had no idea what I was about to come home to. About 10 days into my trip, Marcus called me. He sounded confused. He said he had driven by the ranch and noticed a car parked out front that he did not recognize. A white SUV. He did not think much of it at first, figured maybe I had a friend stopping by. But when he went back 2 days later, the same car was there again. And this time, there were 2 other cars parked alongside it. Marcus said he did not go inside because he did not want to overstep, but he thought I should know. I thanked him and told him to keep an eye on things. I figured it was probably nothing. Maybe a real estate agent had the wrong address. Maybe someone was lost. I had no idea how wrong I was. The job in North Dakota wrapped up 4 days ahead of schedule. The crew worked overtime, the weather cooperated, and we finished the whole project early. I was exhausted but thrilled. I loaded up my truck and started the long drive back to Texas. I did not call anyone to tell them I was coming home early. I just wanted to get back, take a hot shower, and sleep in my own bed. I drove straight through the night, fueled by gas station coffee and the thought of being home. I pulled onto my road just as the sun was coming up, and that is when I saw it. There it was, right at the entrance of my driveway, a massive, professionally made real estate sign. It read Prime Ranch Property, 40 acres, for sale by owner, open house today. My heart nearly stopped. I slammed on the brakes so hard my tires left marks on the asphalt. I sat there staring at that sign for a full 30 seconds, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. For sale? My ranch was for sale? I had never listed my property. I had never contacted a real estate agent. I had never told a single soul on this planet that I wanted to sell. And yet there it was. A for sale sign on my property, advertising an open house on my land. At my home, I slowly pulled up the driveway, my blood pressure rising with every foot, and then I saw them. Cars. At least 8 cars parked along the gravel drive leading to my house. People were walking around my front yard. A couple was standing near the barn, pointing at it and nodding. Another man was taking photos of the pasture. And on my front porch, sitting in my rocking chair with a clipboard and a big fake smile, was Linda Hargrove. She was dressed in a blazer and slacks, like she was some kind of professional real estate agent. She was talking to a young couple, gesturing toward the house like she was showing them the property, like it was hers to show. I parked my truck, got out, and walked straight to the porch. My boots hit those wooden steps hard. Linda looked up, and for a split second, just a fraction of a moment, I saw pure terror flash across her face. She had not expected me. She had not planned for this. But she recovered quickly. She put on that fake smile and said, "Oh, you must be here for the open house. Let me tell you about this beautiful property." I stared at her. I said, "Linda, what are you doing in my house?" She blinked. The young couple looked at me, then at Linda, confused. Linda straightened her blazer and said, "Excuse me, sir, but this property is currently listed for sale, and I am the authorized representative handling the transaction." I took a deep breath. I was shaking, not from fear, from rage. I said very clearly, very slowly, "Linda, I am Jake Dawson. I own this ranch. I have owned this ranch since 2016. It is not for sale. You are trespassing on my property, and you need to leave. Right now." The young couple took a step back. They looked at Linda with suspicion. Linda did not move. She stood her ground and said, "I have documentation proving that this property has been listed for sale through the Whispering Oaks HOA due to outstanding violations and unpaid fines." I could not believe what I was hearing. Unpaid fines? From an HOA I was never part of. Documentation. What documentation? This woman had completely lost her mind. Linda reached into a folder she had been carrying and pulled out a stack of papers. She thrust them toward me like they were a royal decree. I grabbed them and started reading. My jaw dropped. She had created fake lien documents, fake HOA violation notices with my name on them, fake letters claiming that I owed over $47,000 in accumulated HOA fines, and that as a result, the HOA had placed a lien on my property and was authorized to sell it to recover the debt. The documents looked official at first glance, but they were riddled with errors. Wrong county name, wrong property description, and they were notarized by someone named Patricia Wellsone, which I later found out was Linda's sister-in-law. None of it was real. Every single page was fraudulent. I turned to the people milling around my property and raised my voice. "Everyone, listen up. This property is not for sale. This woman has no authority to sell it. She is not a real estate agent. She is not my representative, and she has no legal right to be here. Please leave my property immediately." The reaction was immediate. People started walking quickly to their cars. The young couple practically ran. One older gentleman approached me and said, "Sir, I am so sorry. We had no idea." He handed me a flyer that Linda had apparently been distributing. It had photos of my ranch, a description of the property, and a listed price of $1.2 million. She was trying to sell my ranch for $1.2 million. Without my knowledge, without my consent, while I was 1,000 miles away. As the visitors cleared out, I expected Linda to leave too. I expected her to get in her white SUV and drive away with her tail between her legs. But that is not what happened. Linda did not back down. She looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Mr. Dawson, the HOA has every right to enforce its regulations and recover debts owed by property owners within its jurisdiction. This sale will proceed whether you like it or not." I told her, for the 100th time, that I was not in her HOA, that I had never been in her HOA, that her so-called documents were forgeries, and that what she was doing was illegal. She crossed her arms and said 5 words that still make my blood boil to this day. "We will see about that." And then she did it. She pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and in a shaky, breathless voice said, "Yes, hello. I need police immediately. I am at a property on County Road 14, and there is a man here who is threatening me. He is aggressive, and I am afraid for my safety. Please hurry." I stood there in absolute disbelief. She was calling the police. On me, at my home. After she had broken into my property, forged documents, and tried to sell my ranch. And she was telling them that I was the threat. She was playing the victim. She was weaponizing the police against me. Every fiber of my being wanted to scream. I wanted to yell, to rage, to completely lose it. But I knew better. I had seen too many stories on the news about situations like this going sideways. I knew that when the police showed up, they would assess the scene, and I needed to be the calm one. I needed to be the rational one. So I took a deep breath, pulled out my own phone, and started recording. I pointed the camera at Linda and said, "Linda, for the record, you are on my property without permission. You have forged legal documents to try to sell my home, and you have now called the police to report me as a threat in my own yard. Is that correct?" She looked at the camera, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. She did not answer. She just turned away and waited for the police. 2 sheriff's deputies arrived about 12 minutes later. They pulled up the driveway with their lights on. Linda immediately rushed toward them, tears streaming down her face. She was putting on the performance of a lifetime. She told them that she was a community representative, conducting an authorized property sale, and that I had shown up uninvited and started threatening her. She said she feared for her life. She said I had been verbally abusive and aggressive. The deputies looked at me. I was standing 20 feet away with my hands visible, holding my phone. I was calm. I was quiet. I said, "Officers, my name is Jake Dawson. This is my property. I own this ranch. I have all the documentation to prove it. This woman is trespassing and has been attempting to sell my home using forged documents." One of the deputies, a guy named Deputy Martinez, asked me for identification and proof of ownership. I walked to my truck, slowly and with my hands visible the entire time, and retrieved my wallet and a folder I always kept in the glove box. The folder contained a copy of my deed, my property tax receipts, my homeowner's insurance documents, and a copy of the original purchase agreement. I handed everything to Deputy Martinez. He reviewed the documents carefully. Then he looked at Linda and asked her for her documentation. Linda handed over her fake folder. The deputy took one look at it, flipped through a few pages, and then looked at his partner. Even from where I was standing, I could see the expression on his face change. He knew something was very wrong with those papers. Deputy Martinez asked Linda a series of direct questions. "Ma'am, are you a licensed real estate agent?" No, she was not. "Do you have written authorization from the property owner to sell this property?" No, she did not. "Are you aware that the county records show this property is owned by Jake Dawson and has no liens or encumbrances of any kind?" Linda stammered. She started talking in circles, mentioning the HOA, the violations, the fines. The deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, is this property within the boundaries of the Whispering Oaks HOA?" Linda hesitated. Then she said, "It should be." The deputy looked at her. "That is not what I ask you. Is this property within the HOA boundaries? Yes or no?" Linda did not answer. The second deputy had been on his radio during this exchange, calling in to verify property records and check for any legitimate liens. When he came back, he confirmed what I already knew. My property was not part of any HOA. There were no liens. There were no outstanding violations. The property was mine, free and clear. Deputy Martinez turned to Linda and said, "Ma'am, the documents you have presented appear to be fraudulent. You are not authorized to sell this property. You are currently trespassing on private land, and you have filed a false police report by claiming this man threatened you, when our body cameras show he has been calm and cooperative since we arrived." Linda's face went white. She started backpedaling, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that she thought she had the right, that the HOA board had approved it. But it was too late. Deputy Martinez placed Linda Hargrove under arrest. Linda was handcuffed and placed in the back of the patrol car. She was charged with criminal trespassing, forgery, fraud, attempted theft of property, and filing a false police report. 5 charges, each one serious. As the deputies drove away with Linda in the back seat, I stood on my porch and tried to process what had just happened. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. This woman had tried to steal my home, my ranch, everything I had built. And if I had not come home early, she might have actually pulled it off. Someone might have actually given her money for my property. The thought made me sick to my stomach. Once the police were gone and I had a moment to breathe, I walked through my house. And what I found made me even angrier. Linda had been inside. She had rearranged furniture. She had removed personal photos from the walls and replaced them with generic decorative prints. She had cleaned and staged the house like it was actually on the market. My gun safe had been moved. My personal documents in my office had been rifled through. She had even put fresh flowers on the kitchen table and set out a plate of cookies for the open house visitors. She had been in my home, without my permission, touching my things, moving my belongings, treating my house like it was hers to sell. The violation I felt was beyond words. The first call I made was to my attorney, a sharp guy named David Chen. David had helped me with the property purchase back in 2016 and had handled a few other legal matters for me over the years. When I told him what happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then he said, "Jake, this is one of the most brazen cases of property fraud I have ever heard of. We are going to bury her." David immediately began preparing a civil lawsuit against Linda Hargrove personally, Whispering Oaks HOA, and anyone else who was involved in this scheme. He told me to document everything. Every photo she took down, every piece of furniture she moved, every fake document she created, everything word spread fast in a small town. By the next morning, everyone within a 20-mile radius knew what Linda had done, and the reaction was overwhelming. People I barely knew were showing up at my ranch with casseroles and offers of help. The local newspaper ran a front-page story. The comments section on their website was flooded with people sharing their own horror. Stories about Linda and the Whispering Oaks HOA. It turned out I was not the only one she had bullied. Dozens of homeowners within the development came forward with stories of excessive fines, intimidation, threats of liens, and abuse of power. Linda had been running that HOA like a petty dictatorship for years. People were finally speaking up. 3 days after Linda's arrest, the Whispering Oaks HOA held an emergency board meeting. Without Linda there to control the narrative, the other board members were scrambling. They issued a public statement claiming that Linda had acted alone, that the board had never authorized the sale of my property, and that they were deeply disturbed by her actions. I did not buy it for a second, and neither did my lawyer. David subpoenaed the HOA's financial records and meeting minutes. What we found was damning. There were emails between Linda and 2 other board members, Frank Paulson and Deborah Klein, discussing the plan to force me out. There were references to the developer's offer. There were calculations of how much money each of them would receive if the deal went through. Linda had not acted alone. She had conspirators. Frank and Deborah had known about the fake documents. They had known about the forged liens. They had even helped Linda gain access to my property by paying a locksmith to open my front door while I was in North Dakota, telling him they were property managers. The locksmith, to his credit, had kept a receipt with Linda's name on it. That receipt became a critical piece of evidence. David expanded the civil lawsuit to include Frank Paulson, Deborah Klein, and the real estate developer, a company called Greenfield Properties. We alleged conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft by deception, breaking and entering, trespassing, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The total damages we sought were $2.5 million. When Greenfield Properties got served, they immediately tried to distance themselves from Linda. Their lawyers claimed they had no knowledge of her methods and that they had simply expressed interest in purchasing land in the area. But the emails told a different story. One email from Greenfield's regional manager to Linda read, "Do whatever it takes to get that property on the market. We need those 40 acres to move forward with Phase 2. Do whatever it takes." That phrase would come back to haunt them. Linda hired a defense attorney for the criminal case. Her lawyer tried to argue that Linda genuinely believed the HOA had jurisdiction over my property and that she was acting in good faith. The lawyer claimed it was all a civil misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion. The judge was not impressed. During the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor presented the forged documents, the fake notarization by Linda's sister-in-law, the locksmith receipt, the emails, and my video recording from the day I confronted her. The judge denied Linda's request for dismissal and set a trial date. Linda was released on bail with the condition that she stay at least 500 feet from my property at all times. Despite the bail conditions, I did not feel safe. Linda had already proven she would stop at nothing. David helped me obtain a formal restraining order against Linda, Frank, and Deborah. The order prohibited them from coming within 1,000 feet of my property, contacting me directly or indirectly, and making any representations about my property to any third party. It was a small measure of protection, but it gave me some peace of mind. My friend Marcus felt terrible about everything. He blamed himself for not investigating more when he saw those cars at my property. I told him it was not his fault. Nobody would have guessed that someone would try to literally sell a house they did not own. But Marcus did give me some additional information that proved helpful. He told me that about a week before the open house, he had seen Linda and another woman putting up flyers at the local coffee shop, the feed store, and the community bulletin board at the library. The flyers advertised the ranch property sale and included Linda's phone number as the contact. Marcus had grabbed one of the flyers and kept it. That flyer became another piece of evidence showing premeditation. The story started getting picked up by larger media outlets. A regional TV news station ran a segment about it. Then a national outlet picked it up. The headline read, "HOA president arrested for trying to sell neighbor's ranch without his knowledge." The story went viral. My phone would not stop ringing. Reporters, podcasters, content creators, everyone wanted the story. I did a few interviews trying to keep the focus on the legal issues and the danger of HOA overreach. The public response was incredible. People from all over the country reached out to share their own stories of HOA abuse. It was clear that this was not just my problem. It was a widespread issue that resonated with millions of people. Greenfield Properties was the first to cave. Their lawyers contacted David and offered a settlement. They wanted this whole thing to go away before it caused any more damage to their reputation. After some negotiation, Greenfield agreed to pay $650,000 in damages, issue a formal public apology, and permanently withdraw from any plans to develop land within 5 miles of my property. They also agreed to terminate their relationship with the Whispering Oaks HOA. David recommended I take the deal. I did. That money covered my legal fees and then some. But more importantly, it sent a message. You do not mess with people's homes. With the developer out of the picture and the evidence mounting, Frank Paulson and Deborah Klein did what cowards always do. They turned on their ringleader. Both of them agreed to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for reduced charges. They provided detailed statements about how Linda had orchestrated the entire scheme. They described meetings at Linda's house where she laid out the plan, showed them the fake documents, and assigned them tasks. Frank had been responsible for researching my property records to make the fake documents look authentic. Deborah had created the flyers and managed the open house logistics. Their testimony painted a clear picture of a calculated, deliberate conspiracy led by Linda Hargrove. The civil lawsuit against the Whispering Oaks HOA itself moved forward. The HOA carried liability insurance, and their insurance company quickly realized this was a losing battle. They offered a settlement of $400,000. My lawyer pushed for more, arguing that the HOA had a duty to oversee its officers and had failed spectacularly. They eventually settled at $575,000, with the condition that the HOA undergo a complete restructuring, including new bylaws, an independent oversight committee, and mandatory training for all board members. The settlement was paid by the insurance company, and the HOA's premiums skyrocketed afterward. Many homeowners in Whispering Oaks told me later that their monthly dues nearly doubled as a result. Some were angry about that, but most of them directed their anger where it belonged, at Linda. Linda's criminal trial took place in January 2024. It lasted 4 days. The prosecution presented an airtight case. They had the forged documents. They had the emails. They had the locksmith receipt. They had my video. They had the testimony of Frank and Deborah. They had the flyers. They had the testimony of 3 people who had attended the open house and nearly put down deposits on my property. One of those potential buyers, an older retired couple from Houston, testified that they had actually written a check for $25,000 as an earnest money deposit. Linda had taken that check. She had deposited it into a personal bank account she had opened specifically for this purpose. That was the moment the jury's faces changed. That was when they realized this was not just a misunderstanding. This was theft, plain and simple. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They found Linda Hargrove guilty on all 5 counts: criminal trespassing, forgery, fraud, attempted theft of property, filing a false police report. When the verdict was read, Linda broke down in tears. Her attorney requested leniency. The judge was not sympathetic at sentencing. The judge looked directly at Linda and delivered a statement I will never forget. He said, "Mrs. Hargrove, you abused a position of trust. You weaponized bureaucracy against an innocent man. You forged legal documents to steal his home. And when he caught you, instead of showing remorse, you tried to have him arrested in his own yard. Your actions represent a profound betrayal of community trust and a serious criminal enterprise." Linda was sentenced to 5 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 3 years. She was also ordered to pay restitution of $87,000 to cover the costs I incurred as a direct result of her actions, including security upgrades, property damage, and time lost from work. Frank Paulson received 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and was permanently barred from serving on any HOA board. Deborah Klein received 18 months of probation and 200 hours of community service. Both were required to pay a portion of the restitution. Both were removed from the HOA board immediately. Neither of them showed their faces in the neighborhood much after that. Remember Patricia Wellsone, Linda's sister-in-law who had notarized the fake documents? She was charged separately with fraudulent notarization and conspiracy. She pleaded guilty and received 1 year of probation and a permanent revocation of her notary commission. She also had to pay a $5,000 fine. During her plea hearing, Patricia admitted that she knew the documents were fake, but agreed to notarize them because Linda had pressured her and promised her a cut of the profits. After everything settled down legally, I invested in securing my property. I installed a full perimeter camera system with motion detection. I put up new gates with electronic locks. I posted no trespassing signs every 50 feet along my fence line. I even hired a part-time ranch hand named Carlos to live in the guest cottage and keep an eye on things when I was away for work. I was not going to let anyone catch me off guard again. My ranch was my castle, and I was going to protect it. I want to be honest about something. Even though I won, even though justice was served, this whole experience took a real toll on me. For months after it happened, I had trouble sleeping. I would wake up in the middle of the night and check the cameras. I would hear a car on the road and tense up. I felt violated. Someone had been in my home without my permission. Someone had touched my things, moved my belongings, and tried to take away everything I had built. That feeling does not just go away because someone gets convicted. It lingers. It sits in the back of your mind. I eventually started talking to a counselor about it, and that helped. But it was a process. If you have ever had your sense of security shattered, you know exactly what I am talking about. Remember the retired couple from Houston who had written Linda a $25,000 check? Once Linda's bank accounts were frozen as part of the criminal proceedings, the money was recovered and returned to them in full. I actually met them during the trial. Their names were George and Martha. They were the sweetest people you have ever met. They had been looking for a quiet place to retire, and Linda had nearly scammed them out of their savings. George shook my hand and said, "Thank God you came home early, son." That hit me hard, because he was right. If I had not come home 4 days early, who knows how far this would have gone. This experience taught me a lot about how IOS can be weaponized by the wrong people, and I want to share some of those lessons with you. First, if you are not part of an HOA, make sure you have documentation proving it. Keep copies of your deed, your property records, and any correspondence that establishes your property's boundaries and status. Second, if someone claims you owe them money or that they have authority over your property, do not take their word for it. Verify everything through official channels. Contact your county records office. Talk to a lawyer. Do not let anyone bully you into compliance with fake authority. Third, always, always, always have cameras on your property. If I had not started recording when I did, it would have been my word against Linda's. That video was crucial in the months following Linda's conviction. Something beautiful happened in the Whispering Oaks community. Without Linda's iron fist ruling over them, the residents started to relax. They repainted their doors whatever colors they wanted. They put up garden decorations without fear of fines. Kids played in the yards without someone measuring the grass height. The new HOA board, led by a reasonable woman named Sandra Okafor, implemented fair and transparent policies. They reached out to me personally to apologize for everything that had happened and assured me that no one would ever bother me again. I appreciated that gesture more than they probably knew. As of the time I am telling this story, Linda Hargrove is still in prison. She is eligible for parole in about 8 months. Her husband filed for divorce shortly after her conviction. Her children, 2 adult daughters, reportedly cut off contact with her. Her house in Whispering Oaks was sold. The new owners painted the front door bright red, which I am told would have absolutely infuriated Linda. I am not going to pretend I feel sorry for her. She made her choices. She tried to steal my home, my life's work, and then tried to have me arrested for catching her. Every consequence she is facing, she earned. Today, my ranch is doing great. The horses are healthy. The pastures are green. I finished building a new workshop behind the barn last month. Carlos is a fantastic ranch hand and has become a good friend. I still work as a welder, but I have been able to take fewer out-of-town jobs thanks to the settlement money. I spend more time at home now, and honestly, I appreciate every minute of it more than I ever did before. You do not realize how much your home means to you until someone tries to take it away. If you are listening to this and you are dealing with an HOA bully, a neighbor from hell, or someone who is overstepping their authority, I want you to know that you are not powerless. Document everything. Save every letter, every email, every text message. Record every interaction you legally can. Know your rights. Talk to a lawyer. Do not let anyone intimidate you into giving up what is rightfully yours. And most importantly, stay calm. I know it is hard. Trust me, I know. But keeping your composure in the face of craziness is the most powerful thing you can do. It keeps you on the right side of the situation, and it lets the truth speak for itself. Looking back on everything, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if that North Dakota job had not ended early. Would Linda have actually sold my ranch? Would some unsuspecting buyer have given her hundreds of thousands of dollars? Would I have come home to an empty property with a new owner standing in my living room? The thought sends chills down my spine. But here's the thing. Life has a funny way of working out. I came home at exactly the right time. I caught her red-handed. I stayed calm when everything inside me wanted to explode. And in the end, justice was served. My ranch is still mine. My home is still standing. And Linda Hargrove is sitting in a cell somewhere, thinking about the day she messed with the wrong rancher. So to anyone out there who thinks they can bully, intimidate, or cheat their way into taking what does not belong to them, let my story be a warning. The truth always comes out. Justice might be slow, but it does not forget. And you should never, ever underestimate a man who loves his home. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Stay safe out there and protect what is yours.